So it'll be Alabama and Notre Dame in the Rose Bowl game presented by Capital One in Arlington, Texas to start us out on New Year's Day. Apparently, Brian Kelly was not bluffing about not playing in the playoff. That game is now in Texas. Clemson and Ohio State in the All-State Sugar Bowl at night under the lights, and both games are on ESPN. Clemson, Ohio State, a playoff matchup we've seen a handful of times before. As you know, a handful of times before, a good way to describe Northwestern pulling a stunner in college basketball, but they do it, beating Michigan State 79-65. This year just seems to be a write-off with regards to upsets. You can't be surprised with anything you see. Over the weekend, Kentucky dropped its fifth straight. It's their worst start in 93 years. So the Cats go down, the Spartans go down. Who else will go down? It seems like every single night somebody is in trouble. And speaking of in trouble and a win nobody expected, not Northwestern and Michigan State, the Jets over the Rams, 23-20 for their first win of the season, sliding out of the top spot for the NFL draft for now, having that quote-unquote, I guess, coveted number one pick. If you work your way towards that, Jacksonville now has it by virtue of a quote-unquote weaker schedule. The Jets were a 17-point dog. Even Goody Two-Shoes himself, McVay, was apoplectic after the game. That's when you know things have gone wrong. Former Jets front office insider Mike Tannenbaum will join us here in just a moment to break down exactly what happened with the Jets yesterday and whether a win actually equals a loss. Mike Greenberg, our resident Jet fan, will be here this morning as well in the 7 a.m. Eastern hour. And SportsCenter is brought to you by Goodyear. Whether you're on the field or on the edge of your seat, Goodyear wants you to embrace the unexpected. Every upset, touchdown, fourth quarter comeback, let it move you. No matter the season, no matter what it is, Goodyear here to help drive you forward. Goodyear, more driven.
And the Jets deal the Rams a really difficult loss to deal with.
This loss will demoralize us only as much as we allow it to. It's going to be embarrassing, sick to your stomach about it.
The Jets get their first win of the season in what has to be the biggest upset this year.
I'm just happy for our guys. It's been too long for us to even remember what a win feels like almost.
It's like they just won the Super Bowl, honestly.
I mean, that's where we are with the Jets. That's where we are.
So much conflict in the Jets fans right now. So much. Happy their team won a game, but now on the outside looking into Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes.
Indeed, and that's where we'll start. You heard the call there on 98.7 ESPN in New York. Mike Tannenbaum, as I mentioned, general manager for a couple teams, including the Jets, joins us this morning on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Before we hear from Mike, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Adam Gase asked this after the game.
A win like this produces a lot of conflicting emotions because there's a large segment of the fan base that wanted you guys to lose out and get the number one pick. What do you say to those fans?
Hey, our job's to try to go out and win every week.
I think that's fair enough. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. Adam getting straight to it before we bring in Tannenbaum. And just my thought on it, Chris, is simply this. I mean, look, there's a handful of teams in the NFL that have gone 1-15. Nobody remembers them. They all do remember the 2017 Browns, and they remember the Lions, the 2-0-16 teams. And if they're all going to be shipped out the day the season ends or the day after the season ends, the last thing you want on that resume is any stench of an 0-16 season. A win is a win. 1-15, it sounds silly, is so much better than 0-16 when it comes to your future job prospects, especially when you know, why are we building for 2021? Most of us aren't even going to be here anyway. Mike Tannenbaum joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. So was a win a loss, Mike? What do you think?
I agree with what you just said. You know, the coaches and players in that building, they're not worrying about next year. Everybody else is. And look, there's a massive gap from Trevor Lawrence to everybody else. And as I put out on social media yesterday, there's really a big gap between him and the last three number one picks. When you think about Joe Burrow, Kyle Murray, Baker Mayfield, that's how transcendent Trevor Lawrence is. So the task at hand, guys, right now, if I'm the Jets, is how good is Sam Darnold? Because I have to start thinking about names like Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, and now I go into the Kyle Trask. And there's a whole bunch of guys in college I have to look at. But it really starts with, what do I have in Sam Darnold?
Mr. T, if draft positions hold steady in the last 2 weeks of the season, if you were the general manager of this Jets team with the second overall pick, what would you do? Would you actually draft Justin Fields or one of those other quarterbacks? Or would you try to trade down and get a bevy of picks to build out the rest of the roster?
Yeah, Chris, it's a great question. And as of now, I would still look at a quarterback, because Sam Darnold's had a number of years between USC and what he's done so far in the pros, and I still don't see a high-level, consistent, franchise-level quarterback. Now, in fairness, we could say that going back to USC through now, there hasn't been continuity, skill players, things that we've talked about quite a bit. But at some point, greatness has to shine through and say, I could elevate people around me. So to me, Justin Fields has a better ceiling than Sam Darnold. And certainly I would look at Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, Zach Wilson, and BYU, and I would strongly lean towards a quarterback. Now, with that said, Sam Darnold will have a chance to make a closing statement. He has a couple more weeks. And in fairness, this Jet team, as we know, should have beaten the Raiders and really had the Patriots on the ropes not that long ago as well. So it's not a slam dunk, but right now I just don't see Sam Darnold being that elite player.
On the other side, real quick with the Rams, I know it's a one-off. They're not that bad. They're going to the playoffs. It is a little jarring. McVay used the word embarrassing. Just inside of front office, just for 1 second on the Rams, what's the feeling inside there right now with Les Snead and Sean McVay? Yeah, it's a clunker, but this was a clunker for the ages.
Zubin, it's devastating. And Sean McVay kind of shine light on that a little bit. It's devastating in that building today because you're trying to win the division. You have Seattle, you have Arizona, and you're looking at this game as, we're going to win. 17-point favorite at home, unacceptable, can't happen. So we'll see if it's just a 1 week sort of bump in the road, or maybe this is who they really are. They're a tough evaluation for me because they were dominant against the Patriots not that 2 weeks ago, and for this to happen is really unacceptable.
Mike T, another great performance by Jalen Hurts. Even though the Eagles don't get the win, it comes down to the wire out there in the desert. If you're the Eagles, what do you do with Carson Wentz? Do you go into the offseason with a quarterback competition, or is Jalen Hurts doing enough to say that this is his team going into 2021?
Chris, Jalen Hurts was really impressive yesterday. I thought the game slowed down for him. He made a lot of plays again with his arm, with his feet. He has a couple more weeks, and I'm going to collect all that information before I make a decision. And while you're dealing from a position of strength because you want depth at that position, if Jalen Hurts continues to play this way, you can't have him and Carson Wentz on your team next year. And Carson Wentz with that massive cap hit, you may have to look at doing something with him if Jalen Hurts continues to play this way because he played at a winning level for the second consecutive week.
Okay, so now what happens regarding Wentz? Just to get everybody up to speed, there was so much sports this weekend. It was like sports overload with college football, the college basketball, the NFL. You may have missed this. There was a report from Adam Schefter yesterday morning that essentially said that if he is going to be the backup, this, of course, speaking of Wentz, that he wanted out. Later in the day, there was some reporting late in the evening that wasn't particularly the case. We got to get through the rest of the season. The first two games here from Hurts indicate it's going to be his job, at least the rest of the way. Common sense would tell you. So if you have those dueling narratives out there, all that money sitting on the bench, Hurts playing well, all of this swirling, what do you do with Wentz?
Carson Wentz is going to want to start. He's too much of a competitor. He's accomplished too much at the NFL level. And to me, all signs point to Indianapolis. Indianapolis needs a young quarterback. He's had a ton of success with Frank Reich, their head coach, who is the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. It gets him a lot closer to where he's from in North Dakota. So, look, there's going to be a massive cap hit if and when the Eagles would trade him in the offseason, something that I'm sure they don't want to do, at least not initially. But Carson Wentz isn't going to want to sit there in the prime of his career to watch Jalen Hurts play. So